Okay, I get a lot of questions about transmissions and rear ends and what is the best and what do I think. If I were doing it, what I would buy for transmissions and rear ends and stuff. So let's do a video about transmissions and rear ends. I've spent the last 30 plus years working on race cars, building race cars, and racing cars. And I'm here to help you better understand racing technology. Okay, first off with transmissions, I don't say I would have one or any of them that I would exclude and never use. They're all pretty decent. They last a long time. They hold their value. There's just some things with the way they make some of them that just make one better than the other. And I've been rebuilding these things. I've been inside of them, so I know kind of what to look for and what I like and don't like. The first one I'm going to talk about is the Bert transmission, and that one basically falls at both ends of the spectrum. The worst transmission, the one that I would never buy for myself, would be the original Bert. They were great. They were a huge advancement away from the 4-speed stuff that they were running with the clutch at the time. But transmissions have gotten so much better. I don't think that the first gen Bert transmission would be the last one I would buy. On the other end of the spectrum, I think that the best transmission out there is the second gen Bert. It's got the single shifting lever in there, and they seem almost indestructible to me. The way the clutch works, everything else in there, it's got good bearings. That would be my number one pick if I was shopping for a transmission. The problem with the Bert first gen and the Falcon transmission, and then I think Jericho has one that's coming out and they copied basically the first gen. The biggest problem with them is the shift shafts. It's a shaft that goes in there that runs on the aluminum. There is some lubrication in there, kind of gets whipped up on the shaft. It's not all just straight steel on aluminum, but when you're pushing that, it'll shift on a shaft. So what happens is if that linkage that you're putting in your car is on an angle a little bit, either up or down, doesn't push straight through, it's going to actually try to cock that shaft in there. And over time, they wear and they bind up, and it's just not a good deal. The shifting mechanism is the biggest problem with the Bert first gen and I think the Jerichos. Next to the Bert second gen, I think the next transmission I'd own is the Brinn. Brinn's got the shifting thing figured out. They have a separate cover on the side and has the old 4-speed style shifting mechanism in there. They don't use a shaft, and the Brinn transmission shifts way better than any other transmission out there. The Brinn is a little bit heavier, and that can be a little bit of a downfall, but they're almost indestructible. Their clutches are good, their shifters are good, and that would probably be the second transmission I'd buy to put in the car. I don't know if modifieds are allowed to run that single shifter for the Bert transmission, or if they have to have two, or what their rules fall on. If I were in a modified and it says that you have to have 2 shift levers and stuff like that, I would definitely just go with a Brinn, because you'll run it forever and hardly ever have to rebuild it or play with it. It'll probably be indestructible in a modified. I guess coming in at number 3 then is the Winters Falcon transmission. That has some good features in it. It's got a lot of roller bearings where like the Bert would put no roller bearing and put bushings. The Falcon stuff is a lot of roller bearings, very precise, well-built tranny. Its downfall still is that shift shaft in there. Brinn does a way better job with the shift shaft, even though they might use less bearings, but the Falcon is good because of its bearings and everything is so precise in there. The bearings last a long time. It's just that shift shaft thing in there that is a downfall for the Falcon transmission. While we're on the topic of transmissions, we might as well get into starters for a late model. I know a mod, or at least they used to, I don't know about the rules anymore, but you had to run a stock starter on the modified. But a late model, you could always reverse mount it. It was kind of open field on that. I will not work on a car anymore that has a Bert, a Brinn, or that reverse idler gear transmission. Way bad. If you buy a Bert, Brinn, Falcon transmission, invest in the extra money to put a quartermaster starter and bell housing in it. Huge difference. Always start. They never get that missed tooth thing. They don't require a ton of maintenance like those other reverse mount starters with the idler system in there. Just way better. Like I said, I won't work on a car if it has a Bert or a Brinn or a Falcon bell housing in there. It's just a bad deal. Invest in the quartermaster. They're a little more money, but they'll save you a lot of hair because you'll end up pulling your hair out working with those other bell housings and starter systems. Now I guess it's on to rear ends. There's basically 2 that I know of. If there are more, you'd have to, I'm sure they're pretty close to the same. We're talking quick change rear ends here. But the 2 of them are either a Franklin or a Winters. And I think they're both about as good. I've been inside both of them. They're both really good rear ends. I don't have a preference over either one of them. But I will say something about rear ends. There's a trend, and it's been happening a lot now. I just came back from East Bay, and I heard drivers coaching other drivers to do this about running the brake on the way in with the gas to keep the car up or to help turn the car a little bit. And I mean, if it's a driving style that you have and you're not going to get away from it, that's fine. But caution beware, that is extremely hard on the rear end. Because what happens is when you have a ring gear in there, it's mounted on the left side of the pinion. And when that thing torques, what you're actually trying to do is when you stop on your left rear brake or on either brake and your motor's still trying to turn that thing, what it's actually trying to do is it's trying to separate your ring gear from your pinion gear. On the standard ring gear rear end, like Winters has that one with the little smaller, the standard ones all have a pinion support in there, and that is way better. At least it takes some of that torque of when you're laying on the gas and laying on the brake at the same time, and it supports the pinion both in the back and the front. With some of those smaller ring gears, at least they used to when I was putting them together, they eliminated the pinion support in the front. So all that torque when you're going in the corner and you're grabbing the brake and you're running the gas at the same time, you're only supporting that pinion at the back end, and it allows that thing to twist. And when it allows it to twist, it tries to slide each other off each other, and it tries to literally blow your rear end apart. The stock size rear end always had a pinion nose support in there, which gave some protection to those things and would actually make your rear end live longer. If you have a driver, or you are a driver that likes to run the gas and the brake at the same time, make sure you put heavy duty bells on there. I don't know if Winters makes the thinner bells anymore. They got a 6 rib, they got an 8 rib. I would always go with an 8 rib bell and keep it inspected a lot. Buy yourself one of these little cameras. I got a camera that hooks to my cell phone. It was cheap on Amazon, like 30 bucks or so. And you can get in there and keep an eye on the pattern on your teeth, on your ring gear, and make sure they're not getting pitted. You can check out the pinion. And then you go on the outside, and where these things like to crack is right where your pinion touches the ring gear on that outer flange. If you start developing cracks on there, it'll start leaking and you'll see wetness. Sometimes it'll crack, and then when it cools down, it'll go back together and the crack will be hard to see. But then your rear end will always be wet and you'll wonder where it's leaking from. I think I'm going to try to draw a diagram to better understand what is going on in there with the ring and the pinion, because I think it's a big deal. What a lot of guys don't realize is what is going on in there and how hard it is to run. Like I said, I know they're setting these cars up now where you run the gas and the brake at the same time, and it is a driving style that's becoming more and more prevalent, but I don't want people to blow up rear ends and then blame it on the manufacturers, because the manufacturers are probably building really good rear ends, but the driving styles is really what's taking a toll on these things. So let's go over the drawing board and I'll draw a little diagram on what exactly is going on there, just to give you a better understanding. Okay, this is just a loose representation of what's going on there. It's not, I mean, the gears are normally cut a little bit at an angle in a dish, but this will give you an idea of what's going on. As that pinion rotates like that, they're actually shaped like a wedge, kind of a rolling wedge. And if you stand on the brakes here and you have rolling momentum here, you can kind of see how that's going to end up trying to slip that pinion gear off of that ring gear and put a side force here. Over here you normally have like a bearing, and the bearing is set inside your side bell. So your side bells go together on that rear end and put that thing into like your preload with your spool. So any torque that's being applied on this, the sliding motion, is going to try to blow your center section apart. And that's what happens when you are holding this side and you're rotating this side. You're actually putting a separation on that and try to split that. Like I said, if you have problems with it or you see a leaking, it'll probably be by that last portion or the back portion of that side bell, right kind of closely in line where that pinion gear is in the middle of the rear end. So keep an eye on that, and I say there's a lot of guys that drive with the gas and the brake at the same time. I don't say it's wrong, but it does put a strain on the rear end, and you could see some problems there. If you like this video, subscribe to my channel and ring the bell for notifications. The notifications with YouTube is basically when you log onto YouTube and you want to watch some videos, all it does is put me at the top of the list that says that I have a new video out, and you can go there and check it out. So subscribe to my channel and ring the bell for the notification, and I'll see you in the next video.